Hey folks, I'm Kimberly Dark still. And yeah, we're here for the Hope Desk because this is what we do on the first Tuesday of each month. And here we are. So I am offering you some information on topics that are of current and public interest. I just want to remind you, I don't have all the answers. I don't have the only right answers, but I think it's hopeful when more people know enough about a topic to be able to have public conversation. My voice is like not great today, but I will forge ahead and I'll drink a beverage as necessary. So, hey, I'm not offering you in-depth scholarship, but I do have a couple of links for you that we'll share as we go along. The two topics today have to do with things that you know about. Gosh, the overturn of Roe v. Wade has created a situation where all of a sudden employers are saying, hey, don't worry, folks, we got you. We're going to help fund your abortion or your travel for your abortion. So we're going to talk a little bit about why, hey, this is not the best idea. I want to start, though, by talking a little bit about the difference between a civil rights-based approach to equity and a changing hearts and minds-based approach to equity. And this is a conversation I find myself in more often in the last week since the overturn of Roe v. Wade. And I just want to start by saying that, look, there is nothing wrong with working to elect politicians, to pass legislation that is going to ensure that people have human rights. For instance, the right to healthcare is, critical right now. And of course, some of the Supreme Court justices like Clarence Thomas are talking about overturning other rights now that we have opened the door to talk about things that previously were under the heading of right to privacy, which Roe v. Wade was one of those. So here's the thing, and this is the reason why I have often been talking about we need more than a rights-based approach. So I'm going to just talk about this in a couple of ways and hopefully start to build a picture, and you can ask some questions if you would like to. But check it out. Let me just start with a wee story you may have heard about Thurgood Marshall, the first Black Supreme Court justice in the United States. He is dead now, but he served for quite a while. And his views on the law and on the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. with regard to civil disobedience. So they respected one another and they did not publicly criticize one another, but they did sometimes talk about their disagreements. And one of the big things that Thurgood Marshall was against was the idea of civil disobedience and breaking laws in order to make progress. He was all about making laws in order to make progress. And he one time, in a good-humored way, joked with Martin Luther King that, all that marching, all that civil disobedience, you didn't change one law, though. And Martin Luther King's answer was, no, but I changed a lot of hearts. Now, I'm telling this story because I think it is critical in understanding the difference between a rights-based approach and a hearts and minds-based approach. Now, certainly, Martin Luther King wanted civil rights as well. But I think one of the things that we are really poised to understand right now with the overturn of Roe v. Wade is that rights can be revoked. If rights need to be granted by an outside source, they can be revoked by that outside source as soon as opinion changes. So how do we get to a place where it will never be enough to have an opinion that someone else does not have the same humanity as others. So when people change their hearts and minds about something, they become much harder to control. That is to say, a government no longer has the authority to control them. And you're hearing some politicians actually now talking about how we need to, put forth kind of a vote of no confidence in what the Supreme Court has done. So laws saying that you have the right to an abortion, or the right to marry, or the right to live without being enslaved. I mean, that's a great thing, right? But rights are handy, but they can be changed based on who's in power. So I have always been more interested in my own work. I mean, I'm certainly love the fact that lots of people do lots of different work, but I have been more interested in a hearts and minds approach more than changing laws. And how we discuss things matters a great deal. So my big interest is in language and framing. And so actually, Emily, if you could share the article on abortion. This is an article I wrote a few years ago. It's also in my book, Damaged Like Me. And, it's really looking at framing for the abortion issue. And what if we started seeing women as worthy of support during challenging decisions? That difference in framing might cause the rest of the definitions to shift, right? Look, this is not easy, but it is also powerful, even though there are not clear milestones. Like, I think we get really comfortable with, we won the legal battle, like it's a clear milestone. But this hearts and minds approach is a whole lot more like water flowing over granite. You can't tell the exact moment when the rock crumbles, but it will, right? With enough water flowing over it. So let me just come at this a different way, tell you a different story. William Ury offered us the idea that disputes, conflict, comes from one of three places generally. Now, this is, a generalization, but it's a useful one. That disputes are either disputes about power, rights, or interests. So if you solve a dispute based on power, it's like, look, I have more might, and so I am going to be in charge of the outcome of this dispute. We all know that one, power. And power obviously doesn't have to be physical. It can be lots of things. Rights is the one we're most familiar with. That's like, this is the law, and you cannot, the law says, you cannot hold slaves anymore as of this date, right? This is why Juneteenth is so important, because obviously rights alone mean nothing until people conceive of them and obey them. Yeah. So rights is really where we are entrenched in the US political system with regard to how we think about who's able to do what. But the third way, based on interests, is actually where mediation is focused. So when people solve a dispute based on interests, they're not trying to look back and say, here's what I'm entitled to, or here's what happened. They are trying to, in good faith, look forward together and say, this is my interest. Okay, this is my interest. Here are our interests. We are entitled to try to reach our interests. And how might we do that without, offending each other, without ruining each other's lives? How might we reach our interests? So combined with this idea of changing hearts and minds, you can sort of start to see how focusing on interests helps people to identify with one another, to say like, wow, like I totally see why you want what you want because I want what I want. Yeah. So focusing on interests is another way to think about reframing. All right, there's more that I could say about this, but I think that we are coming to a place here in our country where we have to start looking at more than just rights and laws. Does anyone have any questions or things to say about this particular topic before I move on to talk about employers? All right. You can ask more questions later if they come to you. So, Emily, would you share the article from Time Magazine about companies paying for abortion travel? So, let me just give you a little list of why this is a shit idea for, for companies to be in charge of this sort of thing, right? There is the threat of criminality involved. First of all, let's just start there. And it is not clear whether a corporation or an employer, but if it's not a corporation, helping someone to leave the state to get an abortion is going to be criminal behavior. First of all, I think we're going to see some of these employers pulling back a little bit if that is the case. Which is to say, I think that for many, this is not a real conviction as much as it is a way to align with a majority, a spending majority, right? It's a public relations move. So the thing is, if you have to tell your employer that you're getting an abortion, privacy is broken and trust is uncertain, especially where there may be criminality involved. Here's something else. Your corporate office may say one thing, but your boss, your actual supervisor, may feel completely different. So think about this. Just because rules are in place does not mean they supplant pre-existing conditions like sexism and racism. Like how sexual harassment is already illegal, but that shit still happens, right? So women could be labeled in their local workplaces as sluts or murderers or God knows what else. They also could be anybody seeking an abortion, right? Could be, blackmailed in a variety of ways. And I want to point out Starbucks is already doing this in the language that they have put forth regarding the idea that they will take care of employees. Because they've already said, unless you are seeking union involvement. Whoa, like think that through for a minute. Like that's something significant. Blackmail could also be one-on-one, and how bosses treat people who need extra time off is another issue. And it can also rankle other workers if policies are unclear. So there's still also a lot of uncertainty regarding what these policies would actually mean for employees, whether benefits would be managed by health insurance providers or supervisors or a human resources department, or whether employees can use health savings accounts for abortion care, or how employees' privacy will be protected. So I just want to suggest that, a better approach from the workplace angle might be to have clear provisions of health benefits and adequate time off for any procedures that a staff person may need, and without asking any questions about those health procedures. Better that those corporations put pressure on politicians and then also support abortion services directly, and also make sure that those corporations are not, on the one hand, trying to provide health care for their employees, but on the other hand, funding politicians who are taking away our rights. So those are some of the reasons why that is a whole mess. Is there anything anybody wants to say about that situation?
I haven't read through the article that you shared. I noticed it's from April. But my question is anyone doing work that you admire around the getting like an overview, laying out an overview of what employers should look out for when
I haven't, thanks. I haven't seen that yet. I want to say too, though, that even though, like, because you point out this article is from April, look, even though people have been talking about this, because we knew this overturn of Roe v. Wade was coming, nobody has gotten clearer that I know of with regard to how are they actually going to progress and move forward. And that's also a red flag. And there may be laudable efforts out there that I just don't know about. So I certainly would, if you go back and look at this on YouTube later, if anybody wants to post things in the comments that they think are really good efforts, I would love to see that. I just don't know of them right now.
Yeah, nor do I. I wasn't asking like a leading question.
Oh, no. There's lots of things I don't know. I mean, I'm certainly.
I wasn't setting myself up to be like, well, I do.
Things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've never been particularly comfortable about asking for much from my employers until now, but now I work for a company that is like so hardcore supportive and awesome. And also I'm in a different place in my life and my self-confidence and sense, is higher than it's been, but Jesus, I would not. Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot to think that people even can come forward about something like abortion. I mean, I'll share that I just in the last month needed to ask for a disability accommodation for some work that I'm doing. And wow, it was the first time I have ever done that. And it was really, really personally challenging. And I'm talking about arthritis. I'm not talking about anything that is at all controversial. It's just the idea of needing something that feels like special treatment. I also want to just add on one more thing that's problematic. So if a corporation like Walmart, for instance, who is heavily invested in and using resources from many of the southern states that are making abortion illegal, one of the big questions also would be, how are you, like, is this a benefit for all employees, the ones that are making minimum wage working in your stores, or is it only a benefit for corporate employees? Because that's a significant issue as well, because we already know that the people who are going to be hit hardest are the most marginalized, racially, economically, gender, in many different ways, marginalized. So that's its own shit show. I'm just apparently going to use the word shit an awful lot today because that is how I feel. Anything else? I see your note about coming in late, Eileen. You're always welcome to come late. Come late, leave early, do as you please. Anything else about either of these topics? And I also want to, while you're thinking about that, I also want to ask you, is anybody already talking about these topics? And if not, where might you be able to? And of course you can answer or not answer, it's okay.
I mean, I'm definitely talking about these issues. And I don't know. I've fortified my bubble. So I don't interact with anyone who I don't want to. I have the immense privilege to be able to not fucking have to talk to assholes and idiots anymore.
Yeah, I hear that. So you are talking about these issues, but largely to people that already agree with you.
For now, that's all I can handle.
Yeah, fair enough.
Although I will say, I've noticed that I'm not shy about reminding people that this is not a Christian nation. Like as a Jew, that is very up for me. And I'm not shy, nor am I, and I'm incredibly energized to have that. I want, to state my case there, but around other things, I'm just.
That's excellent though. And
words.
I think that is a conversation that needs to be had over and over and over again by many of us. And I'll tell you the language that I use and maybe you have something particular you say, but the specific language I use to talk about just that is, no, sorry, this is not a Christian nation. This is a nation in which you are free to be Christian. Yeah. That is a very different thing. And it is a one sentence way to stop a person who is trying to run off down that path of, well, at least we're getting Christian values back into blah, 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 blah.
Eileen just threw her hands up.
I know.
The throwing up of the hands.
Yeah.
I think I do a lot of throwing up of hands. And
fair enough. Well, folks, I want to remind you, we might be done for today, but I want to remind you that these, as long as the video comes out okay, they get reposted on YouTube. So please join that channel so that you can see what's already been said in previous months. I also will not be with you for the month of August. We're taking a hiatus because I am teaching a course in Berlin during the month of August. And the times, I looked at it, I was like, no, I'm not getting up in the middle of the night to do this. So we're just taking a month off, but I'll be back in September. And as usual, thank you to Emily for her help. Thanks to all of you for coming.
Good for you for taking care of yourself.
See you in September, everyone. Bye.